Palestinian medics say more than 300 people have been killed after Israel launched a series of airstrikes in Gaza early on Tuesday.
EU ministers debated ways to save Radio-Free Europe after the Trump administration announced cuts to the pro-democracy media outlet over the weekend.
At least 300 people have been reportedly killed and more than 100 injured after Israel launched extensive airstrikes in Gaza on Tuesday. Local report quoting the Hamas-run health ministry said many of the dead included children and women who were gathered to break their Ramadan fast. The deadly strikes came early on Tuesday morning after talks to extend the fragile Gaza ceasefire failed to reach an agreement. Israel's Prime Minister's office said it instructed the army to target Hamas across the Gaza Strip and blamed the strikes on Hamas's refusal to release hostages. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry has warned the death toll may rise, while Hamas condemned the latest raids, holding Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responsible for what it called an unprovoked escalation against Palestinians. Israeli authorities have said they will keep fighting in Gaza for as long as the hostages are not returned and its war aims are not achieved.
Officials ordered the evacuation of hundreds of homes near Malaga in southern Spain after heavy rains caused riverbanks to burst, unleashing flash floods. Firefighters were searching for a missing couple in Sevilla on Tuesday morning and found the body of a woman near the area where their vehicle disappeared. Andalusia's Interior Chief Antonio Sanz said that 19 rivers in the region were on high alert for flooding. A total of 40 highways across the region, as well as some rail lines, had to be closed due to rising waters, and school classes were suspended in 16 municipalities. Spain, which has suffered from a prolonged drought in recent years, has received steady rainfall, especially in its south, for the last 2 weeks, and the latest storm proved too much for reservoirs and riverbanks. Scientists and government officials link these swings between extreme dry and wet spells to climate change, which has also produced increasingly hot summers in Spain.
Officially or not, the issue of defense is crucial on the EU agenda. Russia's invasion of Ukraine might have caught Europe off guard, but it is the possibility of the US not committing to Article 5 which came as a harsh wake-up call.
I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created.
Former Polish defense minister says the idea itself sounds premature, although for Poland, the largest defense spender in Europe, there is a lot in it.
Myślę, że stworzenie sił zbrojnych Europy rozumianych jako po prostu suma sił zbrojnych poszczególnych państw członkowskich o tyle jest przedwczesna, że pojawiłoby się pytanie, kto miałby być niejako dysponentem tych sił. Gdyby pytać się o takiego dysponenta, to Unia Europejska musiałaby wyłonić w ogóle jakieś ciało, które byłoby takim rządem europejskim, a na to jest jednak za wcześnie.
O konieczności stworzenia struktur.
I Europa musi podjąć odpowiedzialność, jaka zawsze na niej ciążyła, ale która częstokroć była przerzucana właśnie, historycznie uzasadnienie, ale przerzucana na Stany Zjednoczone. Europa po agresji rosyjskiej na Ukrainę i po teraz zmianie polityki Trumpa wobec Europy podjęła wreszcie decyzję, na którą przez wiele dziesiątek lat czekaliśmy.
What Europe can benefit from is Ukraine's warfare experience and its defense tech industry. Integrating Ukraine's military-industrial sector would not only help pave the way for the country's EU membership, but also would boost Europe's defense capacity. A little earlier, Euronews talked to the soldiers of Ukraine's 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, asking them what Europe can learn from Ukrainian battlefield experience.
Якщо раніше конфлікти були не таких масштабів, то у нас зараз набагато масштабніше. У нас використовуються дрони, артилерія, дуже багато і новітньої зброї в, скажімо так, військовому руслі. На той час не було таких всіх, скажімо, роботизованих військ, дронів і так далі. Використовувалися якісь там РПГ, танки, на цьому було все. Тому у нас є чому навчитися, я думаю, що будуть ще брати нас в інструктора не тільки в Україні.
On the day Italy commemorates its COVID victims, survivors of the pandemic feel blessed. Sergio is among them. Today, he's more thankful than ever to the doctors who saved his life at this hospital in Rome 5 years ago.
Mi ha fatto una grande emozione, si sente anche ritrovare il dottor Magliacani, vedere tutto il reparto, capire che qui ci sono passato e sono tornato a casa, altri non lo hanno fatto.
He recalls the moment that changed everything for him.
Tripli guanti, tripla mascherina, quindi erano veramente irriconoscibili. Però mi aveva colpito questo sguardo che era uno sguardo come se ti dicesse calma, pace, tranquillità, sereno, ci siamo noi. E invece nel momento in cui mi ha detto lei è gonfio, gli occhi si erano chiusi, erano gelidi, era diventata la professionista, non era più soltanto il medico che ti confortava, lì doveva decidere in un attimo quello da fare.
Dr. Magliacani compares the pandemic to a monster. He tells us that the most difficult part was seeing patients in pain.
È stata una cosa tragica, per cui abbiamo visto morire persone che chiedevano la mano, non potevano vedere nessuno, tragica. Vuoi vedere morire le persone tragicamente, così, soli. E quella è stata la cosa peggiore.
But not all have shown gratitude for the work we have done, Dr. Magliacani tells us. Society and institutions, he says, seem to have forgotten how crucial our role was. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
EU government ministers debated ways Radio Free Europe could be kept afloat after the Trump administration announced sweeping cuts to the pro-democracy media outlet over the weekend. The Czech Republic, which has hosted Radio Free Europe for 25 years, is leading an EU push to keep the network alive. Sweden's EU Affairs Minister expressed support for the initiative on Tuesday.
In terms of financing. Today we will also support a Czech initiative which Sweden has co-signed with the ambition of making sure that Radio Free Europe really continues to be an important voice for freedom and democracy, especially in those places where it is most needed.
But EU Foreign Chief Kaja Kallas said finding funding may not be easy.
It is sad to hear that the US is withdrawing its funding. Now the question for us is, can we come in with our funding to leave or fill the void that the US is leaving? The answer to that question is that not automatically, because we have a lot of organizations who are coming with the same request to us. But there was really a push from the foreign ministers to discuss this and find the way.
Radio Free Europe began broadcasting during the Cold War, and its coverage has played an important role in countries across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East.
It's a scene unimaginable a few months ago. On Monday, Syria's interim foreign minister represented Damascus in an EU conference on Syria's future. The European Union doubled down on its support for the country's transition after the fall of al-Assad, unveiling €2.5 billion and committing to further investments if the new authorities steer the country towards an inclusive, stable future.
We are ready to do more to attract the necessary investments for reconstruction as the political transition advances towards a credible, an inclusive and non-sectarian government.
But despite hope, there is also fear. Brutal violence recently erupted in Syria's northwest between gunmen linked to the new Sunni Islamist-led government and pro-Assad insurgents, with more than 1,300 reportedly killed. The UN says Alawite communities were mostly targeted.
The violence outbreak is very worrying, and it shows that the hope in Syria is really hanging by threads.
I think that we have to be more vocal on both directions, which is clearly expressing when those things happen that no impunity would be allowed, and we want that this kind of situation won't be repeated.
Also on the table, what the transition means for Syrians in Europe. The UN's refugee agency says 60% of Syrian refugees have voiced an interest in returning to their home country. But the UN's migration chief told Euronews that discussions on the return of refugees cannot take place without commitment to investing in Syria's future.
What we're encouraging states to do is to really invest in this peace-building process, invest in the revitalization of Syria, invest in humanitarian assistance. Because what we do know is that if people go home and they're subjected to violence, or they don't feel safe, or they don't have a future, then they'll migrate out again.
The European Union says that after 14 years of civil war, it can now work together with the government in Damascus to ensure this is the beginning of a better chapter in Syria's history. It wants to invest further in Syria. It could further ease sanctions, and it's touting a role for the European Investment Bank in the reconstruction of the country. But the recent eruption of violence in the northwest of the country is a reminder that the situation is still volatile. The interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, is a former al-Qaeda commander, and the rebel group he led to topple the al-Assad regime is still listed as a terrorist organization by the European Union. But despite all that, officials here say that for now, the de facto Syrian government is the best hope for Syria. Marit Gwyn for Euronews in Brussels.